Okay. Uh, Thanks everybody for staying with us through the afternoon. And today afternoon, we are going to kick off the Artificial Intelligence Ethics Summit, the Suchir Balaji Memorial one, with our favorite speaker, Ed Newton Rex. He has done a lot of research. He's a Stanford researcher. He has done a lot of work in the AI copyright space, and he has given a TED talk. And he's now running a company called Fairly Trained Initiative, which is where he's trying to help AI companies to do this in a very fair manner. So I think without much ado, I'll let him speak, and think you guys can check the conference website to know more of his work and what he has done. So in fact, he has done a lot of work around guiding this music industry. He's a mentor for Abbey Road Studios, and also he was a former scout of Anderson Horowitz, one of the top venture firm in the AI space. Without much ado, I'll invite Ed to give a good keynote to enlighten us with respect to AI copyrights. Go ahead, Ed. So you feel free to share in case if you have any material, Ed.
Thank you so much, Shan. And thank you to everyone for having me today. If things are a bit noisy, I apologize. I'm actually moving house today, which is also why I'm sitting outside. So forgive me for that. But I want to thank Suchir's parents for asking me to speak today. When they asked me, I immediately said yes, because I want to do what I can to honor Suchir's memory. Suchir was an incredibly bright individual. He was thinking about AGI long before most people were, artificial general intelligence, and he wanted to help build it. He joined OpenAI when it was a non-profit and when it wasn't selling commercial products. And Suchir helped them scrape work from the internet. But as they became commercial, he started to question this, as you would have read in his writing. OpenAI argued what they were doing, scraping work from the internet, was legal, that it was a fair use of these creators' work. But Suchir came to disagree. He was incredibly brave in making a stand over this issue. He quit the company and he went public with his contention that this was not, in fact, fair use, what was happening, what AI companies were doing. And this was just a month before his tragic death. So I'm going to talk today about why I believe that Suchir was entirely right. So there are three key resources that generative AI companies need in order to build great AI models. They need people, compute, and data. So they need engineers to build their models, GPUs to run the training process, and data to train the models on. Now, AI companies spend vast amounts of money on the first two, up to $1 billion per model training run. And now there are reports of up to $1 billion, incredibly, per engineer. But many companies expect to take the third resource, training data, for free. Now, right now, a lot of AI companies train their models on creative work that they haven't paid for or asked permission to use. This is unfair and unsustainable. But if we reset and license training data, we can build a better generative AI ecosystem that works for everyone, both the AI companies themselves and the creators without whose work these models would not exist. And I feel confident through my chats with Suchir in saying that this is what he believed in. He believed in a fair ecosystem. Most generative AI companies today do not license most training data that they use. They use web scrapers to find, download, and train on as much content as they can gather. They're generally secretive about what exactly they do train on, but it's clear that training on copyrighted work without a license is rife. For instance, when the Mozilla Foundation analyzed 47 large language models released between 2019 and 2023, they found that 64% were known to be trained in part on Common Crawl, a dataset that includes copyrighted work, such as news articles from major publications. And a further 21% didn't share enough information for anyone to know either way. Companies from OpenAI to Anthropic to music generators like Suno have trained on people's copyrighted work without having a license to do so. This is standard practice now across much of the AI industry. But this unlicensed training on creative work has serious negative consequences for the people behind that work. And this is for the simple reason that generative AI competes with the work it's trained on. This is not the narrative that AI companies like to portray. We like to talk about democratization, about letting more people be creative. But the fact that generative AI competes with its training data is inescapable. A large language model trained on short stories will be able to create competing short stories. An AI image model trained on stock images will be able to create competing stock images. An AI music model trained on music that's licensed to TV shows will be able to create competing music to license to TV shows. And these models, even if they're imperfect, can be used so quickly and cheaply that this competition with the people whose work is trained on is inevitable. Now, Suchir focused on this in the essay he wrote about AI copyright and fair use. He used the example of Stack Overflow, a question and answer platform on the internet. He said if ChatGPT trains on Stack Overflow and then competes with Stack Overflow, that cannot be fair use. Now, this isn't just theoretical. Generative AI is still quite new, so we don't yet have large-scale studies that will tell us the competitive effects that it's having, but we're already starting to see exactly the sort of early effects you'd expect in a world where generative AI competes with its training data. For instance, the well-known filmmaker Ram Gopal Varma has said that going forward, he'll use AI-generated music in all his projects. Indeed, numerous music fans already report listening to AI music in place of human-produced music. And an AI song recently reached number 48 in the German charts. In all these cases, AI music is competing with the song and songs that it was trained on. Or take Kelly McKernan. Kelly is an artist I know from Nashville. For 10 years, they sold enough of their work to make art their full-time income. But then in 2022, a data set that included their works was used to train major AI image generators, and their name became one of many that was used by huge numbers of people to prompt Midjourney and Stable Diffusion and other AI image generators to make art in the style of specific real human artists. Kelly's income fell by 33%, almost overnight. Illustrators around the world report similar stories, being outcompeted by AI models they have reason to think were trained on their work. And the freelance platform Upwork wrote a white paper on the effects of generative AI that they have seen on the job market. They looked at how job postings on their platform have changed since the introduction of ChatGPT. And sure enough, they found exactly what you'd expect, that generative AI has reduced demand for freelance writing tasks by 8%, or 18% if you look at what they define only as low-value tasks. So the initial data that we have, plus the individual stories we see, all align with the logical assumption generative AI, by being cheap and easy to use, competes with the work it's trained on and the people behind that work. Creators argue that this is illegal. The legal framework of copyright affords creators the exclusive right to authorize copies of their work, and training AI systems involves copying. Now, here in the US, many AI companies argue that it falls under the fair use copyright exception, which allows unlicensed copying in a limited set of cases, like creating parodies. This argument has been made publicly by Google, Meta, Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic, Adobe, Suno, Udio, and many more. Creators and rights holders strongly disagree, saying there's no way this narrow copyright exception can be interpreted as legitimizing the mass exploitation of creative work to produce automated competitors to that work, to put people out of business. And for the record, I think they're entirely right. Of course, the question is previously untested in the courts, and there are currently, I think it's now something like 48 ongoing lawsuits in the US alone, brought by rights holders against AI companies that will help resolve this question. But this will take time, and creators are suffering from what they see as unfair competition right now. So they propose a simple solution that has worked before: licensing. When companies want to make use of copyrighted work, be that in merchandise manufacturing or for a streaming service, they license the work they want to use. AI companies present a number of arguments for why they shouldn't have to license their training data. Some of these are arguments they don't have to. They use the fair use legal defense I've mentioned. There's also the view that since humans learn from copyrighted work without a license, AI models should be able to do the same. But this is a very hard claim to justify. Artists have been learning from each other for centuries. When you create, you expect that other artists will learn from you. You learn from a range of sources, including other art, studying textbooks, and taking lessons. Much of this you or someone pays for, supporting the entire ecosystem. In generative AI, commercial entities valued at millions or usually billions of dollars scrape as much content as they can, often against creators' will, without payment, making multiple copies along the way, which are subject to copyright law, to create a highly scalable competitor to the work they're copying. So scalable that there are image generators making an estimated 2.5 million images a day, and song generators outputting 10 songs a second. Arguing that human learning and AI training are the same and should be treated the same is preposterous. Another common argument from large language model providers in particular is that licensing all their training data would be impractical. They just can't do it. They say their models need so much training data that payments to each individual creator behind the data will be small. But this is true in lots of content licensing markets. Creators still want to get paid, even if the payments are small. They also say it's just too much data to feasibly license, but this is less and less believable with the sheer range of large data sets that are available without infringing copyright. You can license content from large media companies. There have been around 30 major reported deals between rights holders and AI companies in the last year alone. And that's to say nothing of the smaller deals that don't get reported. And there are many of those, I can tell you that. There are marketplaces where you can license more data than that. You can expand this with data that's in the public domain, so in which copyright doesn't even exist. There's a 500 billion word data set called Common Corpus that is exclusively public domain content. And you can combine this with synthetic data, which is data that's itself generated by a generative AI model, in which copyright doesn't usually exist either. So there are multiple options available if you want to train your model while respecting copyright holders. But the strongest evidence, I think, that licensing all your training data is possible is that there are, in fact, AI companies already doing it. I know this because I've done it myself. I've been building what we now call generative AI products for more than a decade. And in September 2023, my team at Stability AI in the UK released an AI music model that was trained on data that we'd licensed. It worked very well. There are a number of other companies doing the same thing. These companies prove you don't have to build generative AI by stealing people's work. I founded Fairly Trained, the nonprofit Fairly Trained, to highlight this fact in these companies. We provide a certification for generative AI companies that don't train on copyrighted work without a license. We launched in January of 2024, and we have over 20 companies that have been certified so far. These companies take a variety of approaches to how to license training data. We have an AI voice company that's licensed individual voices to train on, an AI music company that's licensed more than 40 music catalogs, a large language model that's trained only on text that's in the public domain. We have companies that have paid for training data up front, companies that have split their revenue with data providers. There's no one answer to what the exact specifics should be of a licensing deal. But the beauty of licensing is that two sides can come together and work it out. And this is happening more and more. Now, you hear people say that a requirement to license training data stifles innovation, because only the big AI companies will be able to pay the licensing fees. But in reality, it tends to be small startups who make the choice to license all their training data, not big companies, and they often manage to do so without paying hefty upfront licensing fees. And there's another big upside here of these companies licensing training data. All of the training that's happening on people's work without a license, the theft, has led lots of publishers to shut off access to their content. A recent study by the Data Provenance Initiative looked at 14,000 websites that feature in common AI training sets and found that over the course of a single year, among the domains of the highest value for training, the number that were restricted, their access was restricted through terms of service or opt-outs, rose from 3% to between 20 and 33%. The web is being closed. It's being closed off due to unlicensed training. People are shutting off access to their content, and this will negatively impact everyone. Now, it will come as no surprise that the general public don't agree with AI companies' views on what they can train on. One poll from the AI Policy Institute in April this year asked people about the common policy among AI companies of training on what they call publicly available data. This means content that's openly available online, of which a lot is, of course, copyrighted, like articles that aren't paywalled, pirated content. 60% of people said AI companies should not be allowed to train on that, versus only 19% who said they should. And then the same poll asked whether AI companies should pay data creators for training. 74% said yes, and only 9% said no. Time and again, when the public's asked these questions, it hugely supports requiring permission and payment for training on people's work and rejects the notion that something being publicly available online makes it fair game. And the people who create the art that society consumes feel the same way. In October last year, I published a statement on AI training, a short, simple, open letter which just read, "The unlicensed use of creative works for training generative AI is a major unjust threat to the livelihoods of the people behind those works and must not be permitted." It's already been signed by more than 50,000 people, including Academy Award-winning actors, Oscar-winning composers, and Nobel Prize-winning authors. And it's still actually live for signature if you want to sign it at aitrainingstatement.org. This and previous statements make it abundantly clear these artists, these creators, view generative AI that's trained on their work without permission as totally unfair and likely to have a terrible, catastrophic effect on their professions. So where does this leave us? Right now, many of the world's artists, writers, musicians, and other creators straight up hate generative AI. And we can see from their own words that one of the reasons for this is the fact that AI companies are using their work without permission. They're stealing from them. But it doesn't have to be this way. AI and the creative industries can be and should be mutually beneficial. But for that mutually beneficial relationship to emerge, what's needed is for AI training to start from a position of respect for the value of the work you want to train on and the rights of the people behind it. So I don't think we should pause AI development. I think the resources AI uses should be paid for. Licensing is hard work, it can slow you down, but if you license your data, you'll ultimately get to the same point. Models just as capable, just as powerful, but you'll do it in a way that doesn't force creators to batten down the hatches and destroy the commons, and that doesn't pit the world's creators against you. So I am hopeful that more AI companies will follow the examples set by those we've certified at Fairly Trained and license their training data. And I hope that people who use generative AI will ask how their favorite products were trained, because there is a future where generative AI and creativity can coexist symbiotically. It's not too late to change course and attain that future. And I just want to end by saying, I know a lot of people in the creative industries, from authors to writers to musicians to actors. I've met them during this fight. And I just want to mention their heartfelt gratitude to Suchir and to the stand he made and to the opinions that he voiced. I'll just read out a couple of things that people in the community have said to me. But someone has said, Suchir's brilliance and courage touched the creative community deeply. He was courageous and he was on the right side of history. And I totally agree with that. Someone else says, if not for Suchir, our plight would be so much less visible to the world. So I just want to leave with that message of thanks to Suchir for everything he did and for everything he stood for. And thank you for having me here to speak today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ed. I think it's very kind of you, despite your moving houses. I think you have taken time out of your schedule and doing this. I'm very glad also Suchir has got an opportunity to interact with you with your Stanford research background. And yes, before his demise, I think he is certainly, I'll certainly open up for a quick Q&A in case if there are people, if anybody wants to ask any questions to Ed. Okay, I just opened it up for questions. You can unmute yourself. You can just raise your hand and can unmute yourself and can ask. I think I see Heather. Go ahead, Heather. You can unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah, that was really great. I loved the idea of ethical AI and all of that. I did have a question for Ed Newton Rex. In terms of not pausing AI development, I mean, I've seen some concerning reports from Apollo and Palisades about like O3 specifically developing some concerning capabilities like around scheming and sandbagging. So curious to hear your thoughts on that and if you're concerned about that. Obviously, I think ethical AI is better than the status quo, but yeah, just kind of curious to hear your thoughts.
Ed,
Yes, yeah, I'm certainly concerned. I'm certainly concerned about those reports. In general, I think the race to attain artificial superintelligence is pretty irresponsible. I wish companies weren't engaging with it. I think, you know, AI as a broad field is much broader than sort of the quest to attain, you know, super intelligence. I think that AI as a broad field has many benefits. Automation in general is not something we should necessarily, in all cases, shy away from. It can be a good thing for society. I think that's demonstrable. But rapid, widespread automation that can and will affect huge numbers of jobs very quickly, and that has other serious risks, you know, that may be involved, like loss of control, are incredibly worrying. And I think the only thing we can do is pressure governments to clamp down on these companies harder. I don't think these companies should be allowed to, you know, to try to attain super intelligence. I think it's an outrageous moment in history that lets them.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I
Thank you.
agree. I think we're
Thank
on
you.
the same page.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Ed. Are there any other questions from the panelists? If not, I'll hand it over to the next panelist. Thank you, Ed. Thanks for taking time out. You can stay with us. And maybe in case if you include me in your LinkedIn, I will connect you with the rest of the speakers. They are keen to interact with you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Goodbye.